On this episode of Mighty Car Mods, I'm continuing the battle with the MR2.
Whose idea was this
Welcome to another episode of Mighty Car Mods. I've been fighting this MR2 for way longer than I'd like to even think about. Last episode, me and Dave worked out that the wiring loom is totally boned.
Totally finished.
He's right, it's finished. So my good friend here has agreed to help me today for as long as is necessary.
Martin, I'm going to be here all day.
Awesome.
Here's a funny thing. Some people reckon that when you say the word mighty, in an Australian accent, it sounds like Marty.
Mighty.
They reckon that you've been saying Mighty Car Mods.
Do you know what I can't say?
What?
Saskatchewan.
We can't say that
Shout
anyway.
out to my Canadian
Hello
friends.
to Canada, the northernmost state of the USA. Not really, you're your own people. Of course you are. So are we. Martin,
Yep.
MR2.
Yep.
What do you want? I'm here
It's
to
just
help.
fighting me, man.
I'm here to help.
It's just
I'm here to
fighting me.
assist. I'm here to give you moral, ethical, spiritual, and philosophical guidance.
Yep. Well, I appreciate you being here and giving me a hand, man. This is starting to get, but it's close. Believe it or not, it doesn't look like it, but it's actually close.
That said, you did end up in the fetal position on the floor last time I saw you.
Because I worked out my wiring loom, which me and Dave were just going to plug in this magical plug and turn the kit. Nope, not a chance. Not working at all. It's been hacked up too many times. It's wrecked. The plug is melted.
Has
wrecked.
anything been straightforward on this MR2, Martin? Just anything at all?
Nope. Not a thing. What I did manage to do though, just quickly, because I wanted to see if it would leak, is I managed to plug in the heat exchanger for the water to air and fill it up with water and just left it for like days because I want to see if any water would leak out, and it hasn't. So that's awesome. So that's actually, to answer your question, that's the one thing that hasn't fought me is my water to air intercooler, which was from actually Miss Daisy from an old Volkswagen.
So good to see that recycled from our Miss Daisy build. Excellent.
That's the only thing that has worked perfectly so far. So
Which is not an MR2 thing.
No, I know. I know. So what I'm hoping actually to do now is I am going to have to pull apart that wiring. I'm going to put a plug and pin kit on it, which means we just get rid of the melted factory plugs and put Haltech plugs on it and then plug it in. But there's other things that need to be done as well. Inside things, seats, center consoles, gear knobs, just anything you can see basically.
Martin, I'm going to work on the front end and you can work on the back end. And I can see you got some mad seats over there.
I do.
And some things.
I do.
I'll put those in.
Mad?
Are they from a Subaru?
Yeah, man.
Okay, good. I'll put those in. You can do whatever you do here, and I will not leave until it's finished.
Thanks, man.
I'll probably leave very soon.
Why?
So this here is the seat that came in the MR2, which has done around 160,000 kilometres. They're Japanese kilometres, so probably 300,000 kilometres once it was wound back. Not suggesting it was, but maybe it has. As you can see, this seat is absolutely filthy. Ugh. Smells as you would imagine it would. Of course, full of rust, absolutely filthy, but a cool little upgrade that MR2 people seem to like doing is swapping those seats out for some Toyota 86 seats. These ones here are actually from an early BRZ and not nearly as festy. These bolt in on one side. We think, I hope they should bolt on, but you can get this little conversion kit. This is a kit for two seats. One side should go on, the other side goes on. These here are made by DK Imports and basically means you can get some BRZ 86 seats in your MR2, upgrade the filth, upgrade the stench. Stench is fine when it's your own stench, when it's someone else's, not so good. So these ones here, rusty, stinking, going in the bin. These ones here going in the car. That's an awesome modern upgrade, and if you've got an MR2, something definitely worth checking out. So I'm going to get in there, give it a little clean, probably drop it off the hoist because it's hard to do seats and stuff when the doors don't open, so we'll drop it down. We'll get some new seats in there.
Seats in cars are like tea bags that work in reverse. People's bodies sit on them after all sorts of clean and dirty activities and leak juices and smells into them for literally decades. Sometimes no amount of cleaning is going to remove the filth from this automotive teabagging, so some new seats are the best solution.
Hoist has been great for doing underneath, on top the whole time on this car. It's annoying when you need to work inside a car though, because you can't, unless you position it just right, you can't actually get your doors the whole way open.
Yeah.
It's like slightly annoying.
But the amount of times you've had to like be under the car, then over the car, and then in the boot.
Yep.
Crazy, man.
Yep.
Absolutely crazy.
the 86/BRZ seatbelt clip and wiring harness can be removed, and then I'll install the original MR2 seatbelt socket. There's lots of different rules and regulations depending on what country you're in when it comes to changing seats, seatbelts and safety equipment, so make sure you check with your local rules.
So I've just taken out this from the driver's side of the car. For some reason, an earlier owner of this car had held it in with this very thin piece of metal here, and it was held on literally by about one thread of this nut. So I don't quite know what's going on there, but that was dodgy AF. So when you're pulling the inside of your car apart, like, this is a really good time to give it a proper clean. Now, you may have seen in a previous episode where Marty pulled out this note that he said that he found under his seat.
I did find it.
That says thick tights, genie pants and brown boots. Now, he pretended that he found this in the car. He actually put it in there. This is his shopping list of what he'll be wearing when we do the final challenge. Martin in his genie pants and his brown boots. Whoever did write this, though, it was written in 2010, Martin, by the looks of this receipt.
Cool.
And that means this car's been in Australia for longer than that.
Yeah.
And hasn't been involved in anything too disastrous
Hope
recently.
Not yet, anyway.
The factory wiring loom has been sliced and diced so many times, much of the reference material I've got is completely useless as nothing matches up.
My seats, on the other hand, are going in nicely. The rear seat mounts on the 86 seats bolt straight into the MR2, winning. The front mounts, though, require this basic right angle adapter to position the seats correctly. But this does mean we'll have full use of the seat slider, recline and height adjustment.
There's a few different ways to skin this axolotl. The easiest way was going to be Dave's plug. It just plugs straight into the factory ECU loom. It's all pre-populated, it all works. You plug in the ECU, you load up a base map, you start the car and you drive. Not going to happen. Option 2 is a plug and pin where you use the factory wiring harness, but you just put new Haltech plugs onto it for your ECU. That's the next easiest way to go. That assumes that your factory wiring loom is intact. Mine's not. So what are we going to do? The next, well, the most crazy option is to do an entire new loom for the whole engine. I don't want to do that because I don't need to, because actually the motor's quite simple. You've got the injectors, you've got the coils, you've got the signal, which is coming from the distributor, and you've got a few other sensors that the Haltech itself needs, which you have to wire in anyway. So what I'm going to do is do a bit of a hybrid of both. I'm going to use these plug-in pins. I'm just going to add wires for stuff that's really easy. And I'm going to use the factory wires on stuff that isn't stuffed, and hopefully that'll be enough to make it work. That's a really noisy monkey. Do you hear that monkey?
So noisy. They do that when they're horny.
As long as you've got good reference material, installing an ECU isn't much more difficult than wiring in a stereo. But now it will be necessary to trace each wire back to the sensor, solenoid or component it's connected to and confirm it's in the right place, label it and move on. Doing this now will prevent smoke coming out of things later on.
Now this looks like an absolute puzzle, and it really is, except the more you look into it, the more you start to see patterns like this red one with a blue stripe. There's multiple of those that come down into the ECU plug and then merge into one wire, which means it's probably either a power or an earth. And then same with the brown. The brown doesn't have any stripe on it, and there's lots of browns, which makes you think, okay, maybe that's a signal power or a ground. And then in the middle, you've got a wire that has a stripe on it, so blue and black, blue with black in this case. And you can work out from that, that's probably the actual signal wire. So that's the one that's the most important to work out where it goes. label it, move on to the next thing. Some of these things I don't actually know what they are. These will be solenoids that control things. So there's a T-Viz system under here, which is where there's blades in the throttle that change depending on revs or boost pressure, all sorts of things. I don't know. That's what the ECU works out. We'll need to control that too. You can delete it, but I think we'll keep it in this stage just because it's there and it's not that hard to make it work. And then slowly work our way. The most important thing to find is the distributor. That's all our signaling. That's really important. And a lot of the rest of the stuff we can just add back in. Temperature sensors, coils, injectors, TPS we might make new wires for just because these have been hacked up before and it's not really worth the risk. I'd rather do my own hacking and know that it's done right. Well, as right as hacking ever can be. Ideally you just have a new plug, but I don't have one. One reason I can start to appreciate that people like carbies on older cars is that these wires, if you'd never strip them back, you'd look at those colours and go, oh, those colours don't match any diagrams. Only once you strip back the wires and realise it's actually been cut and shut, but to different coloured wires. So the wires here will never match what's at the ECU and they're probably off either a different car or a different generation of this car. Like, you just don't know till you start digging.
All right, so those seats are in. I've just finger tight all the bolts. Oh, it's comfortable. Way less festive than it was before. We got seat belt, we got seats. That is an epic upgrade, everyone. If you've got an MR2, if this is the kind of thing that floats your goat, then I think that is an excellent upgrade. Looks really good. Come and have a look, Marty. Looks excellent. In fact, you can take a seat and enjoy your newfound comfort and cleanliness.
Wow, they look like they're meant to be there. Oh, dude, this is awesome.
Are they higher than before?
No, but they're bigger.
Can we pump this down? Is that going down?
It's got an up and down pumper.
Do you want me to keep going? Is that working for you?
Yeah, definitely.
That's as far as it's going to go, man.
Perfect.
It's getting a bit chafed.
Yeah, dude. This is sick.
That's awesome.
Uh-oh.
What?
Just pushed the clutch pedal and forgot that I disconnected the clutch and now it's on the floor.
All of these bolts are completely Monk City.
Yeah, maybe get some new ones.
They are just horrendous.
These always get munted. Like people try and bolt them through carpet and they didn't look very good when I pulled them out. Now they look
These are one of the things, though, that you probably shouldn't DAC, right?
Oh, I did it again. No, you shouldn't DAC these until you're 100% sure that they're engaged.
Yep.
And then away you go, then you marry them into the floor. New shifter, feels good. Seating position's good. I got more room. This is awesome, man. This car's like not winning me over, not even a little bit. I mean,
And
it is what?
If you want to do this job at home, the most excellent tool that you can use is this. This is like a gardening thing. It's an old lady knee guard that I found in Marty's bedroom, and basically you just put your knees on it and it means you don't get sore knees when you're doing the gardening. It's excellent.
Sore knees and chafing, that's the worst. Thanks, man. Thanks for your help. That's
No
mad.
worries, Martin. See you later. I'm going home.
Why?
No, I've just got some stuff to do. I just remembered my car's not finished. But thank you. Have fun. Good luck. I'll see you on the racetrack.
How
I'm out.
convenient. This is what the old big resistor pack used to connect to, because back in the day, injectors needed resistance, electrons, I don't know, something. Anyway, what you can do with modern injectors, like what I've just done to control the modern ECU, is get rid of the big resistor pack, which we already chopped off. And all you got to do is join all these wires together. And all that does is, instead of sending the power through this white wire into the big resistor pack and then splitting it out into the 4, you're just sending raw 12 volts of raw electrons straight into the injectors ready to be used, so that the ECU can trigger them by grounding them, which opens them. It's a really simple thing to do. What I've done is buzz out each injector wire to make sure I'm actually on the right track, because you don't want to join the wrong five wires that are wrong. But this is the same as what we did on the GTAR, and other cars of this era use a very similar system. It's easy, it's simple, and happily I can use those wires. I don't have to run new ones.
It's easy to forget just how much has changed since this car rolled off the production line in 1990. Around that time, the internet had only just been commercialised, smoking was only just banned on aeroplanes, McDonald's opened in Russia, the USA was in a massive recession, the Berlin Wall is being demolished, they've only just stopped dumping waste in oceans, Microsoft released Windows 3.0, the Hubble telescope sent its first picture from space, and Mariah Carey released her first album. The average income per year was around 28 grand, which is about how much one of these cars would cost new, depending where you lived. For their time, these cars weren't considered slow. A US spec turbo MR2 could do 0 to 100 in 6.1 seconds and a 14.7 second quarter mile. We never got turbo ones in Australia at all, and neither did Europe. Like my car, however, grey imports filled the gap, and mine being a hardtop makes it a little bit more special, as most came with Targa tops that leak heaps of water. This car is one of the cheapest ways to get into a mid-rear layout. Your other choices are the Honda NSX, Lotus Elise and a bunch of Ferraris. Not exactly cheap cars then or now.
Although the car is looking messier than it has for, well, most of the build so far, the good news is getting rid of some of this old junk and a lot of this old wiring and stuff that is just wrong. There's wires that change colour for no apparent reason, so I've had to go completely back to the drawing board, back to Toyota's own manual for this car with detailed diagrams that tells you what wire does what colour they are, what terminals they go to. The terminal information is not much use because the terminals on these plugs are all wrecked, but the wire colours is really handy because, for example, it says violet and white, it says speed, great. We mark that as speed and then we leave it alone. Then the idea is we work out what all the essential wires are, label them, get them ready to put into a Haltech plug, and then run any extra wires that are not covered by what the car has back into the engine bay, plug them into the ECU and get it set up. So a little bit more to do, it's just more fiddling with wires. So I'll spare you that. I'll fiddle with some more wires and we'll come back when we're ready to start plugging things back in. is a moment I've been waiting for. Finally, the engine bay is looking pretty much as it will. It's missing a few clamps and bolts and other bits and pieces that I'll go through and fix up, but it's good enough now that I can start putting the pins onto the wires. This is where the old ECU used to go. It comes out of 2 different bungs. Now they're not gonna be long enough to just plug straight in, so there might be some wire extending going on there. This is why I went through and labelled everything. It makes this part a lot easier. For example, I can see a TPS. I know it has a power wire, a ground and a signal, so I know I need 3 pins, and just sort of work my way through. So this has a diagram here that shows you what should go where on each connector. It makes things easier because it's just already like preset. You know where the injector is going to be, you know where the ignition is going to be, you add your triggering, then you add your outputs. And that's pretty much it. It's the same process the whole way through. So I'll see you in about 39 pins time. Injector 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 2 tools I consider essential for this job. One's a wire stripper. You can use side cutters, but it's too finicky. That just makes things really, really easy. You can even set it for the right length. And this is a crimping tool for these kind of pins. You actually buy this from Haltech, and it basically means that it will crimp it perfectly because those pins do have to go with the wire through the plug, and you don't want to mess that up because it just causes mad dramas.
Having the right tools on hand for this job makes it super easy. Once the wires are crimped to the pins, they're quite strong and will stay seated in the plug, no problem at all. I've got 2 plugs, A and B, the pin locations are numbered and match the supplied diagrams, so it's just a matter of slotting the right wire into the right pin position. Then I can plug in the CAN cable for my wideband oxygen sensor and connect up the ECU power. Before I do fire it up, I want to drain the oil one last time to make sure there's no foreign material inside the engine and replace the filter as it got beat up while removing the exhaust manifold. Twice. With that done, it's time to pour in some fresh fuel, plug everything in, turn the key and fire up the new ECU.
Oh no! That's a coil on fire. That is a Yaris coil blown up. Alright, next major problem. If the fuel pump is on, we get 80 pounds of fuel pressure and we get rained on from lots of different places, which means the return is not working, which means fuel pump and fuel tank out.
That's right, remember that fun game of removing the tank from the MR2? I have to do it all over again. The return line that carries low pressure fuel back to the tank is blocked, meaning the fuel can't escape the system, the regulator can't do its job, and fuel pressure goes through the roof, or through the floor in my case. The only way to fix it is to pull the entire assembly apart and try and clear the blocked line. Using a combination of compressed air, penetrant and some thin welding wire, the line slowly comes good and the tank can be reinstalled back in the car. It is a good thing I caught it now rather than out on the track, but it also put me a whole half a day behind.
Moment of truth. Sounds good.
Success, stable fuel pressure and no more leaks.
I'm now just tidying up a few things that I want to work properly now that the majority of the engine bay is sorted. One of the things is there's a fan down here that's normally on the back of the intercooler on turbo models. You see a lot of people with MR2s put fans in here, which is a good idea to get the heat in, either to pull the hot air out or push it down, whatever it is they do. There's a fan in there on the intercooler that the point of it is to bring cold air into the engine bay because it does get hot in here, and unlike a normal car, you don't have that air rushing through the front to keep everything cold. There's a controller box that's down here next to the ECU. That box, the purpose of that whole thing is just to run that fan. Now, because it's old school, the ECU isn't telling the fan when to go off. It's got its own dedicated temperature probe, which is not here. Apparently it lives up on the, I don't know where it normally is, but I don't have it. So I am going to trigger it with the ECU. That's the beauty of using an aftermarket one like the Haltech, is that I can use a spare output to trigger that fan when I want it to come on. Now I'm going to use the coolant temperature sensor, so when the engine gets hot or too hot, or maybe we have no road speed, then the fan can click on, which is just a nice smart way of doing it. So under a certain speed and over a certain temperature, fans on, keeps the bay cool.
Many of the original systems like this on this car are independent of the ECU. That made sense at the time as you didn't have the processing power available to run so many things from the single box. 30 years later, however, activating a relay based on other things is simple and easy, so a basic 30 amp relay supplied with power and a trigger from the ECU gets our engine bay fan working no problem.
This is actually a fairly exciting moment because now it's time to do setup. Now, normally, if you weren't able to do that yourself, you could take it to your tuner, take it to the dyno and do all this sort of last minute fiddling to make sure things are working. I've still got the core pack number 4 mysteriously letting the smoke out. I haven't been game to plug another one in. I don't actually have any more Yaris coils because Yaris Hilton only came with 4 of them. But I do have some Corolla coils, which are only one part number different, and it's just based on where the actual bolt sits. So that should be fine. I've got 4 of those, so we can burn up 3 of them before we have big problems. I'm going to leave them unplugged for now, so that Scotty can have a look, check the diagnostics, make sure there's nothing funny going on with the configuration. If it's not the configuration, it's the wiring, so I've got to go back through that and check it again. Before we can actually start it and run it though, it needs coolant, so that's the next thing we're going to do.
Toyotas use red coolant, so it's easy to identify what brand of car blew a head gasket at the track day. It's hard to know how long this grotty water has been in the cooling system or if it even had coolant in it at all, which has long since broken down. Either way, it needs to be replaced.
This is Castrol's new Radical SF Premix. Castrol are a sponsor of the show. Make some pretty cool stuff. This is so new that they don't even have it in the big bottles for me yet, but they sent me these pre-production ones in 1 litres. MR2 takes something like 12 litres of coolant. And as a lot of you know, Toyotas use like a red coolant, pink, red, close enough. These cover a wide range of different cars anyway, but you've still sort of got the 2 main colours. You can also get coolant in like blue and yellow these days as well, which is pretty crazy. This funnel bucket helps put a bunch of pressure on the top, like head, and that'll help bleed out any air bubbles. We're going to have to run it to actually, I can hear it trickling out, it's not a bad thing. We're going to have to run it to actually get that to bleed properly, but we're on the right track. Cool, found the wideband. Thermo fan 1 will be for active state low. I've done as much of the setup as I know how to do in terms of setting which outputs go where, which inputs go where, which wires are connected to what in the software. Now it's a bit more sort of expertise, stuff that's specific to this engine, and the fact it is an old engine and some of the strategies it uses to idle and things like that are kind of complex. So Scotty's done it 50 million times before, and being that we're on a time limit, it's now up to him. So he's going to log in and have a look. I'm going to try and start it. Clever bloke. What Scotty's doing now is setting up the trigger and home signal. That's what we're getting off the distributor. There's all sorts of fancy ways to put plates in and do triggering sensors and whatever else, but this means we can use the equipment that's already on the car and it'll be perfect for what we're doing. Smarter ECU is, the easier this kind of thing is to do. Hey, here he is. Hello, my friend.
Hey, g'day mate, how you going?
Good, just enjoying watching all that come together. I tried to set up just the DPOs and steppers and stuff roughly where they're meant to be. The 2 with question marks on them is the thermofan, the ECU thermofan it's controlling is actually the engine bay fan. So what would be great is if that could just come on at idle, but only when the engine's running. Does that make sense? So we're just sucking cold air into the engine bay when it's idling, but when we're driving, we're getting the air blow through naturally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we can change that. That's cool. Any wheel speed sensors coming in?
I believe it's got a speed sensor, yeah, that's coming in from the old ECU. I don't know what kind it is, but I can do some digging on it.
Oh, that's cool. Do you know where it came from?
Speed sensor, this thing has ABS, so I'm sure it's just one circuit, like one speed sensor circuit. I don't think it's directly off a, I doubt it's directly off a wheel.
Okay, and what type of fuel is it on?
Petrol, and just the usual Warbro 322, whatever it is, and 40 pounds of pressure at the moment on an adjustable reg that is VAC referenced.
Let's go to here. The trigger stuff is going to be the bit that's going to be the trick, so I've punched a whole bunch of numbers and then we turn the fuel off.
Yeah.
Do you want to try and just give it a crank for about 10 seconds and we'll see what it does?
I do. I'll just move my laptop somewhere safer. Hopefully it doesn't drop out. The coils are unplugged, just so you know, because I was worried about hosing that another coil, but I do have 3 more.
Oh, good idea. And I've got the fuel turned off as well.
Oh, cool. Hey, it'd be good to crank it to get some oil pressure through the turbo as well.
Oh, yeah, beautiful.
All right, so 10 seconds, you say?
Yeah, go for it.
Going for a crank.
Awesome. Beautiful. Well done. Good wiring.
Oh, really? Did it work?
Yep, so far. Yeah.
Amazing. I hope the offset's okay, like there's nothing funny going on with the distributor.
Let's see. Plug coils in. We'll see how we go.
Plug coils in. All right, this will be interesting to see if one of them melts. I'll start from the ones that don't melt. Here we go.
Okay, that looks the same because I'm looking at the battery voltage and the battery voltage didn't change.
So it's not doing a massive draw. I wonder what that was. That's really strange.
So, are you ready to just cross your fingers and we'll see what happens?
Oh man, am I ready? I don't know. Can we crank it a little bit more just to make sure I've got plenty of oil in the turbo?
Yeah, just hang on 1 second. Injectors should be on. We'll reset everything. All right, if it does start, just use the throttle or do whatever it takes to try and keep it running.
Okay, here we go.
Wow,
Yes, it's got no doesn't have a proper muffler on it yet.
that's pretty cool.
That's awesome, man.
Well done. Good, good wiring
Yes,
straight
yes,
away.
yes. It's fantastic. I was so worried. It's mad.
Are you in a position where you can get it running good enough for a minute or two?
Yeah, it's caught it. That's not me.
Okay, I'm going to put that right down and see what happens.
Sounds awesome. Come on, go for it. Whoa. Kaboom. Thanks, man. Well, I'll idle it a bit and make sure nothing's leaking and just sort of check over everything and neaten it all up, and then you'll see it soon, hopefully.
All right, cool. I'll send you a message in the next little while.
Thanks so much, man. Have a good one.
Good on you,
Bye.
mate. Well done. Good wiring.
Thanks,
Well done.
dude. Bye. Good wiring. Scotty said good wiring. That's a compliment. Good wiring. Look at it. He can't see it. That's why he said good wiring, because he can't see it. If anyone could see that, they would go, no, mate, not good wiring. It's time for a kebab.